Oh, that's me.
Yes, indeed. You start off.
I do. Leading up to the holidays, we are having coworkers share favorite recipes. That's right, Mike.
It has been a lot of fun these last couple of weeks. Morning show producer Cat Viglienzoni for her, that means handmade ravioli. She recently went home to California. Her family makes 1,300 of these each year, and while she was there, she let us share in on the process.
Each family has their holiday traditions. Being Italian, ours is homemade ravioli, which we've been making at my grandparents' house in SoCal, California ever since I can remember. It all begins with the filling, which we start preparing the day before. This year we knew we had even more work than usual because once my grandmother found out I wanted to take a few back to Vermont with me, in true Italian fashion, she bought twice as much meat. We don't really measure anything. We start by taking parsley and a few cloves of garlic and blending those together. Then we add onion and raw Italian sausage. That mixture is spread onto slices of meat sprinkled with salt and pepper. Those are rolled up and wrapped together with a kitchen twine. The meat rolls are then placed in a pot with oil to fry on the stove until done. Later, we add them to tomato sauce and reduce the temperature. Eventually, the meat will be taken from the sauce and refrigerated overnight. Day 2 of ravioli making begins by finishing up the filling. We unwrap the twine from the meat rolls and put them through the meat grinder with some cooked pork chops and spinach. Then Grandma adds breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, an egg, cinnamon, and cloves, blending it together. She says if the mixture is too dry and doesn't clump together well, add another egg. In our family, we have a system. While one person makes the meat filling, another makes the pasta dough. This year, a task for my Uncle Rick. For each batch of dough, 3 cups of flour, 3 large eggs, and a 1/4 cup of water are mixed in a food processor. It's then kneaded into a dough that we will roll into pasta layers. Once the dough is ready, we use a pasta making machine to roll it out evenly and efficiently. This is one of the trickier stages because the dough can be temperamental. Too sticky and it will shred in the machine, but too dry and it will not stretch over the ravioli tray later on. Even with a rolling machine, the technique takes practice, but my mom is a pro. The key is to be patient, careful, and gentle, gradually increasing the thinness. Leftover scraps of dough are kneaded together and reused. Some choose to make their ravioli freehand, but we use ravioli trays. To avoid a pile of ripped dough and spilled meat, the trays need to first be coated with flour. That will prevent the dough from sticking even after the edges are closed. A sheet of rolled dough is laid on as the base and stretched to fit. Then take a handful of the meat mixture and begin filling. This is my job, and there are a couple tricks. The first is to make sure you don't try to force too much meat into one square, otherwise the ravioli will burst open when they're cooked. But too little filling results in flat ravioli. Also, don't pack the filling too tightly or the ravioli will come out hard. To close the ravioli, take another sheet of dough and lay it on top. Gently stretch it to fit across. To press the air out of the ravioli, use a small roller to gently roll over and between the rows and columns, pressing more firmly between the grooves to seal them tightly. Roll over the sides of the tray to seal them as well. When I'm done, I hand the tray off to be separated, a task usually left to my younger sister, Krista. Using a ravioli cutter, she trims off the excess dough from the sides. She then cuts out the individual ravioli and places them on a floured tray to freeze. Once the ravioli are frozen, we remove them from the trays and place them into containers to store, using lightly floured wax paper to separate the layers and keep the ravioli from sticking to each other. Once the container is sealed, they can be stored in the freezer until Christmas, or even as long as Easter. Often, and sometimes on purpose, we have extra dough left over. Since we won't let it go to waste, we add an attachment to the pasta maker to make homemade noodles. Those are left to dry before they're frozen. We like to keep track of our ravioli total, so Krista makes a tally for each tray she separates. This year was a record total for our family at more than 1,300 ravioli. Even for a few families of Italians, we will have more than enough for Christmas and Easter, and a few individual dinners in between. This isn't a quick recipe. It takes hours. But that's why it's a family tradition, because it takes a family to prepare for, entertain each other during, and yes, clean up after a couple days of ravioli making. But for us, Christmas means a dinner highlighted by a dish that looks like this, even when you're thousands of miles apart. Cat Viglienzoni, Channel 3 News.
Isn't that awesome?
That is outstanding. So much work and so worth the effort.
And beautiful. And Kat told me that she actually did take some home so that she can eat them. And she did say that the ravioli did pass through security, so you can take ravioli on the plane.
That's good to know. Have to remember that for next time around.